passion for science when I was younger was paleontology. Fell in love whenever Jurassic Park came out. Fell in love with the book, and then the movie was really great. But I really didn't have much of an interest in science. I was actually only about 6 years or so ago, and I was home after it had been a long night of DJing, and I was kind of worn out, burnt out on the job that I've been doing for a long time. And I saw this preview for the television show Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson, which was a reboot of the original Carl Sagan show, and or follow-up season anyway, just 30 years later. And I sat and watched it, and I saw that first few minutes where he begins to explain the observable universe. What's out there, what's beyond us, beyond our solar system, and what we were a part of, and just seeing all those galaxies, and just thinking about hundreds of billions of galaxies and those countless stars and planets and moons, and just all the different ways that creation is out there was just amazing to me. So I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And from there, I found that I was bit by the bug, and I've just been with it ever since then.
Mm-hmm. So then, what university did you study in, and for how long year you were following space activity, in fact?
So I am actually still in college. I just started a couple years ago. So whenever I fell in love with space, just recently, I actually was a high school dropout. I was I dealt with a whole lot of bullying, and there was like a whole lot of bad things that were going on in my life when I was younger. So I ended up quitting high school. So I just recently got my GED, and I've had a couple of years of community college. My goal is eventually to get my degree. I want to get a PhD in astrophysics, but I'm still taking classes at a community college, local community college. Work is kind of taken over that for like the last year or so. But my goal is to go to CU Boulder or UCCS here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where I'm at, and get my degree in astronomy before eventually, when I'm 50, maybe getting my PhD in astrophysics. It's going to be a little while. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not short term.
Yeah. And then, but with the, getting into the space stuff, once I was kind of doing, I was studying at the same time I was building, Stardom, and started doing the interviews and started getting myself out there. And with my background as a DJ, I knew that there would be a way that I could communicate with people, and what stuff that I could do now, skill sets that I had through social media, a bit of website design. My background in writing, I'd written for a couple of different DJ publications before, industry publications. So I had a background in something that I knew that I could share, and I just started where I could start. And it turned out that ended up being a good thing. There was some skill sets that I had that not a lot of people have whenever they go to school for astronomy. So that was a really, really helpful thing for me to be able to be a part of that early on. And it's taken off. It's led to a couple of really cool jobs.
Mm-hmm. So around taking a look in your Facebook profile and your social media activity, I have an important question for that. So
sure.
What is the most difficult part to make space and science activity more approachable and accessible for everyone in the world? Like, what did you do for that, to share the scientific culture among children, kids, and also society?
That's an excellent question. I would say it's finding a way to bring these really big topics, communicate them in a way that's exciting and interesting. And also, we don't have to use the major terms. Like, we don't have to get so deep in the weeds that people can't understand it. Science can be a really fascinating thing, and really great science communicators have an incredible way of taking these huge topics and bringing it down to earth, so to speak. And I think that's what it is. I really started looking at the other incredible science communicators that were out there and figured out a way that I could possibly model what I was doing after them. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Emily Calandrelli, Bill Nye is another one that's great at it. There's so many people that are out there that are doing it. And I think another big piece of that is also having as many faces and backgrounds as you possibly can, and showing people that science isn't just for a specific type of people. We see on TV so often that it's just, an old white guy in a lab coat that's doing science, and that's not science. Science is absolutely everybody. Space is for everybody. And I think that's important too. The more people that are out there that are sharing this passion for it, I think is how we can connect more people. But yeah, and it's a lot of practice. If we go through and we read all the news of the day of what's the big thing, okay, we think that they may have found more water ice on Mars. How do we explain what that is and how we would be able to use that? So it takes a lot of reading, a lot of study, but I think if we can get those down into ways that people can understand, I think that we end up being great science communicators, and we can get those stories out.
So, Ron, about Stardom project, you told me it's international project, right? It's a team working. So how many people are involved in this project, and from which country?
Oh, okay. So Stardom is it started out as just me whenever I first began, and over time I just realized there was a lot of limitations to what I knew. That there was only so many things. I don't understand engineering. I'm not an engineer. I love astronomy, so I wanted to start working with people that understood that. I don't speak Spanish, and I have a larger Spanish speaking or Latin community, so I reached out to this incredible woman, Ana Cristina Alvera, who came on and started doing science news in Spanish once a week. And she's been dealing with some stuff recently, but she'll be back soon. And we'll be able to talk with her a little bit more about all the things that are going on. And so, yeah, so what I try to do is I try to reach out to as many different communities as I can and have us bring all of that to the table. Now, currently we have, oh man, I've lost track because we've got about 4 or 5 people that are getting ready to come on board and do some new projects with us. But we're probably sitting somewhere around a dozen collaborators. So everything from spaceflight photographers to just general space journalists. And then we have people that'll be hosts of shows. I've been talking to Graham Lau recently, who is an astrobiologist. So he's going to talk about space in the universe, life in the universe, the possibilities of life elsewhere. So that's going to be really exciting. A few friends of mine, both of them are engineers, Melanie and Bailey Burns. I forgot actually how to say Melanie's last name. I don't want to screw it up. And Bailey Burns will be joining us to talk about engineering, a basic breakdown of it. And that's really, really big for me, is to kind of take things from the ground level up for people. I don't know engineering, so let's do a series on it where if I'm learning engineering from you, then I know other people can learn it, and try and keep it a level that, a little bit older kids, not, maybe not like 6 or 7, but if they're 10 or 11, they'd be able to understand it all the way up through whatever age it is. So if we could open that door for more people, that's really what's important to me, is finding ways to let people feel welcome, because we all know, the first time you see the observable universe, you hear about, all these big terms. What are quarks? I don't know what a quark is. What is this? How do I find out? Those things can be really scary. Quantum mechanics is terrifying, even if you've taken the class. I understand. So we want to do the best that we can to reach out to as many people as possible. You're muted. You are muted.
So if you're gonna talk about Ron Sparkman as a person, what is your career goals?
Oh, that's a big one. So I've got a lot of them. I'm really keeping a close eye on everything that's going on with SpaceX. Obviously, we're excited about the launch today, the first time that American astronauts will launch from American soil on American technology since 2011, when we stopped the shuttle program. But I'm keeping a really close eye on Boca Chica and what they're doing with Starship. I personally want to go to Mars. I would love to do that. But there's a lot of stuff I want to do here first. I want to get my PhD in astrophysics. I'm big on going out and venturing. I want to see as much of the world as I can. I love to climb mountains. I did the Everest Base Camp trek a couple years ago. I did the majority of Kilimanjaro this past year, which was my first trip to Africa, and it was awesome. I had an incredible time. Nepal was a place too that I fell in love with. So I kind of have this idea in my mind of, until we get to other worlds, we only have one to explore. So let's see as much of this one as we can. So that's a really big thing for me. And then, I want to see what's possible. If it's only suborbital space is as far as I can go on a trip like Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin, something like that, then that's fine. But I definitely before my time is through, I really do want to see the edge of space at the minimum. I think that would be great. And then I have a plan now. What I would really love to do is a TV show that mixes for people that are listening. I don't know if you know who he is or not, but there was a very famous chef named Anthony Bourdain that passed away not too long ago, and he had an incredible show where he traveled the world and talked to people about their culture and about food and about their history. And I was really inspired by him, and I would love to do a version of that where food isn't the center of it, but space and science is. So to travel as much of the world as I can, talk to as many different science communicators as I can, from all different backgrounds and races and creeds and everything, and kind of share that story that, science is out there, everyone is doing it, space matters to everybody, and to kind of show that. So it would be a mixture of that, like Parts Unknown meets, say, Star Talk by Neil deGrasse Tyson, talking with people all around the world about what it is they're doing. So those are some of them. I think I've probably got some other ones in there, but we don't get to all of them. But if I can even just tick off a few of those boxes, I'll be really happy.
Going back to this point, Ron, what individual has had the greatest influence on you?
Ooh, it's difficult to go past. Cosmos really did it. So the original writing staff of that new Cosmos, which would be Andrew and Steven Sutter, and I think there may have been somebody else on that. And then, of course, Neil deGrasse Tyson on the show did amazing. And then so Neil is probably number one. He's just, if it wasn't for watching that show, I don't know where I would be. I definitely wouldn't be in the space and science community where I am now. I'd probably just still be DJing, probably even more burnout than I was 6 years ago. So that's been, that would probably be him. Although there's been a few others along the way. Phil Plate's one that's a really big one for me. Right beside of Neil is probably Emily Calandrelli. She's an incredible science communicator. She's also from my home state of West Virginia, and there's not too many people that we have that represent space and science in West Virginia on a really big public scale. And she's just such a wonderful inspiration to young women, to really anybody that pays attention to the things that she's doing. And I made the comment the other day, she's sort of a bit of a North Star. Like, she's just she knows what's going on, and she pays close attention, and she's always still trying to learn new things. And I think that's a really great quality to see in somebody. So those would probably be the two. I'd say it's like, it's Neil and Emily, like, are right there together.
So, Ron, what do you like the most of becoming like a consulate of the social media for Space Foundation? What do you like the most in that?
Oh, it's everything. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had. It really is. It's just, so because I'm a social media consultant, I get to work with every single part of the Space Foundation. And it's just, we're doing so much. Today we're launching a platform called CIND. And so it's the Center for Innovation and Education. And there's more details if you go to Space Foundation, our social media. We just put it out right before this, the information on it. So go get some details and see it. But the idea is basically that we touch on everything from the time that you're a little kid until, the end of your life. Or there's always something that you can be involved in. One of our programs is New Gen for people from 18 to 35 years old. And, highlighting all the amazing things that they're doing in the space industry, but also bringing them new opportunities. Space Symposium in particular is our big international event where everybody comes and from all over the world. And it's just this big, huge thing where we take over basically the south part of our city, and we take over this incredible place called the Broadmoor. It's this resort that's here in Colorado Springs. It's one of the most popular ones in Colorado for people to go to. It's beautiful. There's a mountain behind them that you can go see, like waterfalls and all kinds of amazing things. And so we take over that resort for right around a week, and everybody from around the world comes to talk about space and what's going on next. Jeff Bezos was here a couple of years ago and had actually shipped out one of the new Shepard rockets and put it out front of the Broadmoor, so that way people could take pictures in front of it. This rocket that he had launched and landed 6 or 7 times. So it was just this really incredible experience. But I think probably my favorite part of it is that for the Space Foundation Discovery Center, I get to be the chief curiosity correspondent. And what that means is that I get to share space and science, especially astronomy, because that's really my passion, with people. And what we're working on now is we've got some things that we're working on we can't talk too much about yet, but there's some really exciting things in the future. But I get to share this message of space, all the cool discoveries that we're finding. I get to work with a really amazing person. Her name's Colleen Kiernan, and she's the head of PR and social media for Space Foundation. And just to be able to share those messages with the world of what's going on in the space industry, what Space Foundation is doing, getting to interview incredible people. Normally I'm on the other side of this, so it's the whole podcast setup, right? And it's one of the best jobs I've ever had. I often work, I work long days, and a lot of people complain about that. I'm not complaining when I say it. I'm just like, I had another awesome 10-hour day at work. We did so much stuff, and I can't wait for everybody to find out about it. So that's a pretty cool thing to have. But the jobs that I get to do now are just really fun, and we get to be a part of history. We get to do awesome things like we're doing here with you.
Around what experience you found the most, let's say, significant accomplishment in your career so far?
Oh, let's see. I'm really, really proud to be a part of the Project Possum Citizen Scientist Astronautics program. The group of people that are involved in that, I think I can't remember if it's 30 plus or 50 plus countries that are involved in that program now. Jason Reimuller, who is the executive director, is just an incredible leader. And there's just so much that stems from that. So we've got, there's the Possum 13, which highlights women's role in space and science, which was inspired by the Mercury 13, who were, those people that are listening don't know about it. The Mercury 13 were 13 women that were trained at the same time as the Mercury astronauts were, Gemini Apollo astronauts were, right around that era, to see if they had the same capabilities. They did, but this wasn't an official. In fact, there was, in many ways, they were also better than in the men in some of the categories. So there was, we saw that women had the ability to do the same thing that men could do, that they could be astronauts, that they could easily do the math and the science just like guys could. So that became a real big inspiration. So that created the Possum 13. The Possum 13, the whole goal of that is to really highlight women's roles, as well as inspire young women to be leaders. So that one's incredible. Creating an astronaut program with Jason was incredible. There's so many pieces to that. There's another one too that I believe that we have a part of it that also works. That is working to help underdeveloped countries that want to get into the space program and get people to space. So there's just so many pieces to it. Check out projectpossum.org and just read that website. There's just so many awesome things on there. So that's a big one. And then of course it's just, I think it's just being, the other one is, it's just what Stardom's been able to do, where we've been able to get people out, where we've been able to connect them. I've been able to meet people from all over the world and connect with them. One of my really good friends is Yumna Majid. She's from Pakistan, and we've been able to do some really cool things together. And I love that somehow I was able to be a bit of an inspiration for her and be able to be there and for us to talk about all the cool things that she's doing. I love seeing her successes. So that's a big one.
I don't know, we're getting a pass for Wael for a question.
Hi, Ron again.
Hello.
So my first question is about Space 4.2, or we can call it the new space, where governments no longer control this game. And private companies are leaping into space, and we already saw the emergence of private space companies like SpaceX or Blue Origin. So as a science communicator, how can you attract childs and youth to space exploration and encourage them to acquire that self-driven education in order to do what Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos did, for example?
That's a wonderful question. I think it's showing him that it can be done. Continuously highlight all the incredible people that are out there, as well as tell your own story. If you've got a story that is, you're a non-traditional path through the space industry, you found your own way. I think that's a really big part of it. I didn't expect to ever do this. I had the first time that the job came open at the Space Foundation 2 years ago, I didn't apply for a variety of reasons, but one, I was like, I don't know that I'm good enough for this. And, being there and just being being able to do this work with such amazing people is just, it's an honor. Everybody that works there is trying in different ways to reach out, from what we do with the Space Report to the New Gen to the Discovery Center, and all the educators, the formal educators that we work with, the astronauts that come in and work with us and teach kids. And one of the most inspirational people I know, his name's Dwayne Digger Carey. He's a former astronaut. He flew one of the shuttle missions that was one of the repair missions for Hubble. And, you know, he talks about how when he was growing up, he was, you know, he was a bit of, he didn't really care, you know, like science didn't matter to him. And this is coming from him. Like, this is directly what I've seen him tell hundreds and hundreds of kids before. He's like, but eventually I found my way. You know, I didn't care about it. You know, I remember hopping on a train and just trying to travel across the country. And, you know, I hopped on my motorcycle and just, you know, that's what I wanted to do. And then, you know, he met his wife, Cheryl, who's his business partner and 180 Out. And they just do these amazing things teaching kids. But she was a bit of that. And he found his way. He joined the military. He learned to pilot, you know, these incredible planes all over the world. And, that changed. Just because you're in a certain situation doesn't mean you can't make more of it. And that's, I think, one of the best stories. If the more that you dive into a lot of the astronauts and a lot of these big people's backgrounds, Jeff Bezos started by taking books in his truck to mail them out when he first started Amazon. You know, Elon Musk came from South Africa, came to America, and he just started doing little things, and each thing took him to that next step. I think when he was a kid, he was like a teenager and made that video game, right, and sold it for like $5,000.
Yeah.
Then he ended up doing PayPal and like everything. And then when he got all that money together, you know, he becomes a billionaire and says, you know what, I'm going to split all this money I have into these three separate businesses. And then he had to ask for like help for rent money because he just put all his money out there. I think it's easy to remember that, you know, the risks are going to come. There's going to be a lot you're going to have to deal with, but it's so rewarding, and it's worth it to put in the time and the effort, because you are going to end up being an inspiration to someone else too. There's going to be somebody that's going to connect with your story. And so I mean, really seriously, that's a great question. And I think that's what it is just put your story out there so other people can see it, and you're probably going to inspire somebody, and you're going to inspire more people than you ever knew. But if you know of at least one of them, then you've done your job, I think.
That's wonderful. If it can teach us a lesson that we have always an opportunity.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Mm-hmm. So since I've been following you, I'm going to ask you about Mars.
Please do. I love Mars.
So we know that if our life is going to be succeed on Mars, we'll need 5 basic things to be able to live there. For example, water, oxygen, food, shelter, and clothing. And we all heard of devices like WAVAC, which is basically a low-tech dehumidifier, which can extract the water that humans will need, since the atmosphere of Mars is humid. There is also MOXIE, which is a device that sucks in the Martian atmosphere and pumps out oxygen. We'll use also hydroponics to grow food. We'll be able to build buildings using Martian soil, since it's perfect for making beer bricks. We'll use space suits to block radiation and keep us warm. So now, if we have all those things, when will we be ready to put the first human footprint to Mars?
Great question. So the one thing that I do want to do here, gonna drop in a plug for it, is one of the organizations I work for is Explore Mars, and we have a summit every year called the Humans to Mars Summit. And so the reason why I'm mentioning that is that while I do have an opinion on this, we have real top of the line experts that come to this event every year and talk about everything you just mentioned. So there's panels on there. All of them are on YouTube. You can watch them for free. So if you don't know a lot of the technologies, or you don't know about the things that are going on that he just mentioned, please go check that out on YouTube. So our goal is 2033. I mean, I think that we're at that point with everything that's going on right now. Now, it may be pushed back a couple of years just because what we're dealing with the current coronavirus, but I don't see that there's any reason that we get to 2040 and don't have either the first astronauts from a government company, or even before that, if SpaceX continues to advance it the way that Gwen and Elon and the team are pushing it. I think that we are in just an excellent place right now. The whole world is interested in space and science again, and it's no longer just for just a few people. Commercial space flight is coming. I think once more and more people are flying that are, like what astronauts do, what cosmonauts and taikonauts do is truly incredible. You do not need to be that heavily trained if you're not going on a mission to fix Hubble, or you're not going on the year-long mission like Scott Kelly does, to do something like suborbital flight where you're only going to be in space for 10 minutes. Are you physically healthy? Have you done the training? And I think those type of things, the guidelines that they have for people to go to suborbital space, it's going to change a lot of how we see that. Those prices are going to come down from $250,000 US to, probably $100,000, which is still a lot of money. But if you look at it as that's your retirement, we're going to start seeing more and more regular people go to space. And I think that is such a big thing for getting that overview effect out to where, for those that don't know the overview effect, I highly recommend the book by Frank White, where he talked to a multitude of different astronauts about how they changed after they went to space and they saw the Earth from space and saw that we're all here, we're all together, we're all on one planet. There are really no borders in space. That we're all one people, and we've 7 billion of us that are family. And I think that's going to be one of those things that once there's that big shift, I think we're going to see all of us start to be more focused on that. There's only going to be more and more of the faces that I see here today that are just like, space is for me. Let's do this. I want to go. And I think that's going to lead to Mars moving quicker. The more that the public is behind it, the more that we're going to see our tax dollars going to that, especially here in the U.S. So I think that's a big one for me, is that I think it's going to be the 2030s. I think we're going to see NASA astronauts at the minimum there in the 2030s. And if Elon and SpaceX have their way, I think we could see the beginning of colonization there. So that's the goal. Let's hope that we keep this focus on space, because every time we lose that focus, I think that's when it starts to back off again. Well, it's not going to be a decade; it's going to be 2 now, because nobody cares as much. But as long as the public puts their voice to it, I think that we're going to be there sooner rather than later. I think that we're going to figure out the few things that we've got left. There's some information on radiation is still an issue. We know that the possibility of perchlorates in the Martian regolith, which could be possibly poisonous to us. So how do we deal with those? But I think that we're really, really close to figuring out those things.
Well, that's so.
You're Pakistan hacker. Fuck you, bitch. Allah Akbar.
I'm talking.
I'm not sure.
Allahu Akbar.
Who's talking? Mesa, can you mute the microphone on the other people that talk?
He keeps unmuting.
Okay. So thank
We
you
are
for
Pakistan
that
hacker.
information.
Give us $2,000 or we'll hack you.
Could you please, everyone, mute his mic, so when he just or she want to talk, just open it. Okay, go ahead, Ron and Wael.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's amazing. That's great information, and there is no doubt that it will make us better as humans. Mesa, there's some people who are not seriously.
Fuck you, bitch. Fuck you.
Fuck you. Okay, I'm gonna mute everyone. Sorry. So.
Yeah, you may want to delete Jeff and.
I'm sorry for that.
You want to get you probably want to get Joshua too.
But they deactivated, I don't know how they do that.
Mesa, you should do another meeting, because it's fucked up here.
Okay, anyway, just go ahead. I'm trying to check who is connecting and not. So go ahead. I just deleted him. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
Joshua, the one that's at the bottom too, Joshua, you would have deleted him too. That was the other person that was yelling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I deleted him.
There you go. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
No worries. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. What was the next
So
question?
thanks, Ron. It's amazing, and it will definitely make us better as humans to send people on Mars. And we all saw that when we sent people to the moon, people were talking to each other and said, if we can do this, then we can do everything.
Absolutely.
So speaking of which, if you're gonna be on Mars, is there a kind of drink that you like to have?
Oh wow. Okay. What drink would I like to have on Mars? So I recently did an interview with a really great woman. Her name's Dr. Sian Proctor, and she asked me the same thing. And we were talking about what would we like to drink and what would we eat. And so there's this incredible restaurant that's here and in the States. It's right outside of San Francisco, and he's pretty much one of the top chefs in the world. And the one that I would want is French Laundry, and that's the name of the restaurant. So I said I'd like to have that meal with like their top level, whatever their top level wine would be. If you're gonna be on Mars, you might as well go all out, right? So that was now I don't know that we would be able to get it there, of course, but I mean, a bottle of Russian vodka.
Yeah, since there is, we can grow potatoes here, so yeah, we can.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm glad that you noticed that. So it's funny you mentioned. So one of the people that I work for is named Chris Carberry, and Chris has just written a book called Alcohol in Space. And Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, does the forward for it. And he mentions is that whenever everybody found out that we could grow potatoes on Mars, a bunch of people started asking me, like, does that mean that he could have made vodka? He's like, yes, but he would have starved. So that's a really fun point there at the beginning.
So you're a straight vodka guy?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I'm really I'm open to really anything, but my regular go-to is vodka and a mixer, orange juice, Sprite, something like that. But I'm always down for other stuff. I mean, an astronaut offers you a glass of good scotch, you say yes, right?
That's interesting. So I have another reason to go there.
Do you think astronauts are allowed to have alcohol in space?
Okay. Is it okay if I answer that one? It sounded like a reasonable question. Yeah. So what I'll say is, I think that was Shams Astro that asked that question was, does alcohol go to space? So the book Alcohol in Space, he discusses that, and there's been some stuff in space before that he kind of talks about how interesting it is. So when it comes to the U.S. doesn't really send alcohol to space, but he does discuss a bit about how cosmonauts have taken, and a lot of people think that it's actually vodka, and it's not. I believe it's. I'm trying to think of exactly what it was that Chris mentioned now. I'm blanking on it. It's a type of really strong liqueur, and I'm blanking on what it is. But it's a little bit sweeter. But the thing is that whenever they opened it, that microgravity caused it to like bubble up or foam up or something. So even in the mini bottle, they couldn't finish it. So like even the little one, you could take like a little sip of it and pass it around, but you wouldn't even get through that. And so there's a bunch of different stories that he has about that, about different things going to space. They've also been able to take things to space and then bring them back so that way people could utilize them. Somebody took like wine stocks up and brought them back so that way they could try and grow wine. But I think something happened with that one. Ground control, I believe, like grew. They sent a certain amount of yeast to space, like up and back, and then that yeast is what they use to make their beer. So basically, the beer is made in, it's been made from something that went to space. So there's a lot of those little things that kind of touch on. Alcohol, but I highly recommend the book out. Chris goes into full detail on it. It's very well done. He speaks with astronauts, former people from the space community that were around in that era that have some really cool stories. So definitely highly recommend that one.
Yeah. So I guess when we're going to Mars, we're gonna have bars and coffee shops, I think. So that would be amazing.
I mean,
yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard it. Elon Musk has even been one that said that. Of course, we're going to need engineers once we get to Mars, but we're also going to need the person that starts the first pizza place. I want to go to Mars, but I don't need to be the first. I don't need to be the 1,000th. I'm fine with being number 57,303. I'll be the first DJ on Mars. I'm fine with that. Like, it's like what is it? How does this work out? I don't know. I don't need to be the smartest man alive to be there. I don't think, and I think that we're going to see more and more of that. I think that's I think we've got all kinds of opportunities are coming our way.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. I'm very happy to have you on this interview, and I'm gonna pass to Ahmed.
Okay. You were still muted, sir.
Ahmed, are you
And thank
here?
you for all your questions, man. They were really great. Everybody's had been so far.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yeah, I sure do, Ahmed.
Very good. Welcome again, Ron, and thank you very much for this really interesting information. Thanks to Wael and to Mesa and to all the other participants also for being here. Also for our followers in the social media. So I hope you are enjoying this very special interview with Ron today. So I will bring the discussion more to the developing countries and then to the Arab region, to connect with what is going on in the USA and in general in the space industry. So maybe the first thing is taking into account this huge movement of privatization of space. What do you think that developing countries will be able to contribute, or would it be only an affair of billionaires? What do you think about this?
Oh, I think that anything can be done if you have the team and you have the excitement to put it together. It is billionaires that are doing it now, but there are also a lot of people that are not rich doing really incredible things. For instance, Project Possum is Jason Reimuller, Dr. Jason Reimuller, that runs that astronautics program with people all over the world. Jason's not rich. This is just something he had a passion for. And he was, he's applied to be an astronaut before, and he's, would be an amazing astronaut candidate. There's no way I can see him not, fitting every single, checking every box for them. And just
I
think that was okay. I think she just muted, making sure everybody was muted there. I think that there's a lot that we have. That we have people like that are out there and that are doing really inspiring things, and I think we have more and more of those coming. So, is it going to take billionaires? It's going to take raising the money. It's like, this is not a cheap business. Like, you're going to have to spend billions to be able to do it. But I think that there's going to be opportunities that perhaps these organizations are going to open up, that's going to lead towards more and more people. They're going to say, I can do this. So if, Elon Musk, he and his family came from South Africa, and look what he's been able to do here. When's the next person going to do it? That's going to say, New Zealand. New Zealand doesn't have a space program, but they have a space company. And, from what I see, it doesn't look to me like Peter, I think it's Peter Beck. Yeah, Peter Beck. It doesn't look to me like he's a billionaire. Like, whatever it is, it looks like this group of engineers got together and made this company, and now they're launching rockets. But if you're looking at reusability, that's going to be the way to keep it from being so crazy expensive when you're not dropping a $60 million rocket in the ocean, right? So trying to catch it and reuse it, I think, is a really, really big one. So I think that we've got the opportunities there. I really do. I think that there's going to be that door is going to stay open for as many people as want to jump in and be a part of it.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because actually for the launch services and the launch providers, it's mainly an affair of billionaires. But if we consider, for example, the new space sector, we see that more and more normal people like us that even just graduated from the university, that establish and create their startup and then raise funds. But at the end, by trying to analyze what kind of funds they are getting, for example, here in Europe, most of them are getting support and funding from the government, from the public sector. So is it really privatization of space if the government is still investing? So it's just the executor that is different. So you see what I mean? Because we are talking a lot about, even for Elon Musk, if you go back to the
Sure.
USA, without the support from NASA, he cannot do anything about even his ambitions to go to Mars. And without getting the funding and the contracts from NASA, which is a public institution, that will not be possible for him to pursue his work in space. So even if we are talking about private sector, is it only kind of vitrine? So it's just what we see, but in real, still the governments are are actually monitoring all, not monitoring, are still funding most of the space economy. And so what do you think about this?
I think one, you made some excellent points. I think that what we're looking at right now, especially with SpaceX, unless you are an ultra billionaire or you have a service that is going to be able to work, I think that the space industry, there's enough money there for a company to really do it, because satellites are such a big game right now. I mean, there's one of the biggest events that we have here in the US, and I think people, again, come from all around the world. I think internationally it's one of the biggest ones, is satellite. And satellite is all about, you guessed it, satellites. And like 20,000 people show up to that, something crazy. Like, it's another one of the biggest ones in the world. When you go to IAC or you go to any of these other major ones, like ours with Space Symposium and Space Foundation, is that we have, I think that the business is there, but I think that a lot of them, if you want to fund something that is going to cost that much money, you're going to have to get the money from somewhere. So either you're going to be getting more people to space, you're going to be, I think that's a big goal of companies like, like Rocket Lab, I was mentioning earlier, is trying to help more and more people get there and doing it reasonably. And the more that you can, reuse your rockets and take more people to space, and you get that technology down, I think that technology is going to spread more and more. I think it's going to go, SpaceX was the first. We see a little bit with, with Blue Origin and what they're doing, because they want to take, make it, open up space. And I know that Bezos wants, millions of people working in space. So I think that's that. But I think for right now, it probably is going to be a lot of government until somebody finds that way that it's almost like the public is funding it, in a sense, from the things that they're either sending to space or they're supporting it. But yeah, no, I mean, I think you probably hit the nail on the head, at least for now. The majority of people that are doing it, I mean, Bezos has what, $100 and some billion, and they're still looking for contracts with NASA, especially with like the moon lander that they're doing. So, and now, of course, this isn't. I do want to plant the flag here real quick that this is not. This isn't my area of expertise. So this is really me just going off of what I look at as I look at the space industry. So opinions are my own and all that.
No, that's very interesting, because I'm also asking this question and wondering, why do we talk a lot about privatization now of space, while even for Apollo 11, actually NASA contracted private companies like Lockheed Martin and like other companies that actually made the rocket and also the spaceship. So that's why actually I think it's more affected by this new space movement that is maybe also a huge part of it focusing on the downstream, which is something not very usual, because it has also an impact on the broader economy. But for me, the space launch services is still an affair of states, because without having the support from states, from governments, it's very, very difficult to have a sustainable program, launching program. So yeah, okay, I will now get you more to your field of expertise, which is Mars.
Okay, Mars. Let's talk Mars.
Yeah, actually, there is an Arab country, which is the UAE. I'm sure you heard about their plans to
Hope mission.
Yeah, there is the Hope mission that will be launched this year. There is also the village that they are building in the desert to simulate and to have some kind of similar environment to what would be on Mars. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, and there is also, they have a plan that is called 2117, because actually they announced it in 2017 in the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs meeting, and they said in 100 years we will have a village on Mars, which is for me still something very. It's amazing, but I don't know if that's feasible in 100 years. I hope so, but so I would like really to get your insight about this. And there is something else, because in this country I read an article, it was yesterday by coincidence, on Virgin Galactic, which plans launch its space tourism from the UAE.
Nice.
All this is going on in an emerging space nation. Yeah. So what do you think about the contribution of these new space countries, like countries that entered recently in the space sector and that are hugely investing actually in space exploration and deep space missions?
I think it's great. So every year at Space Symposium, there's always a lineup of the heads of the government space agencies, and UAE has always had a great presence. And I think it was a few years ago was my first one. Everybody on that stage, including the UAE, was talking about going to Mars, and they were talking about the first Mars mission, which has now been named Hope. And I think it's wonderful to see it. I think we're only going to see it more and more. We're starting to see more come out of Africa. The Space in Africa group that I've seen on social media is wonderful. I know that I think that the opportunity is out there for everyone, and everyone is making a space, no pun intended, for themselves in space. And what we're seeing with this is that the world will cheer, I think, if everything goes right for the Hope mission. I think it's going to be the same. I mean, we were going to have 4 missions this year that were going to go to Mars, and that is amazing. And it's not like only one of them was from the U.S. We're still seeing the Rosalind Franklin, and it's been moved back a little bit because of a couple of different issues, I believe, with the parachute that they wanted to make sure that was correct. So they're taking some time, and then COVID obviously didn't help that either. But all these different missions that we're seeing there, people are taking the knowledge that we have from around the world, and they're putting it together. And the more that we see these emerging space countries go to space, they're going to start figuring stuff out, and then it's going to lead to more and more countries looking into that, and then also seeing why it's important. And if I remember correctly, our CEO mentioned recently about how large the space economy is now, and I think it's something sitting around $400 and something billion. In a few years, it's going to be like well into like the $1.5 trillion range. I can't remember the exact numbers. She's much better at that than I am. That's why she's the COO. But she just to hear those numbers, you're like, wow, that's such an amazing. That's a big portion of the world's economy. And space is there. There's just so much that can be done with it. And there's a great science communicator, Mike Mongo, says, if we solve for space, we solve for Earth. If we can figure out how to farm on Mars, we can farm on any landlocked area with bad soil on this planet. You figure that out, you're probably going to figure out the solutions that what we need here. And I think that's a really big thing, is that we're going to find more and more ways to fix our planet, to be able to the things that we're screwing up, the more that we focus on space, because it just opens up those doors that are they're just so crazy, some of these issues that we have to solve for. And we solve that, and we're going to take a lot better care of ourselves and the planet that we live on if we learn it here. So I'm excited about it. I want to see as many people as possible get in this game and bring what they have to the table. The more minds that we take ideas from, the sooner we're going to be able to become a more loving, caring, and really just adept species.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You mentioned the spin-off interest actually from the development of space technologies that can be used then on Earth, which will bring us to the next question, because actually in the developing countries, and I'm talking now more about Africa and also some of the Arab countries, they don't have a lot of resources, but actually the youth here in Tunisia, for example, or in the Arab countries, the neighboring Arab countries, or the African countries, actually the youth are really passionate about space. They are for now they see space too far away from them, that, for example, now they will launch today they will watch today the launch of the astronauts, but for them that they are really patient about that, but unfortunately their countries don't really invest in space exploration. So how far can we find new ways for these youth to allow these youth actually to practice and participate and contribute to the space exploration, but differently. For example, instead of talking about launching astronauts, why don't we focus, for example, on space farming that can cost us much less, but we can still have a contribution? Why can't, for example, focus on space medicine, for example? That is a field that we can focus on in those countries, because we have, for example, in Tunisia, I take the example, we have very good doctors, but we of course lack for infrastructure to do research in space medicine. So is it possible that we find some common ground with the big nations, the spacefaring nations, to cooperate and to develop new partnerships in these fields, with, for example, the European Space Agency, with NASA, with the big countries? So is it possible to work together in space exploration, but the contribution of the developing countries will be different, and will be via these services that could not cost like sending an astronaut on top of a rocket, so to space? What do you think about this? Because we are really thinking how we can get them involved, these youth, because they are really I don't think it's very fair that because they are of their geographic region, they don't have access to space exploration and to the opportunity of participating to discover new worlds. So that's why we are trying to bring that to them. But we are trying to find some kind of efficient methods or new methods that will allow that for them. I don't know. What do you think about this?
Yeah. I mean, no. I mean, everything you said was great, and I think that's the path forward. What do you have for now? I mean, at some point we didn't have the technology, to send things to space, and all these things have grown around it as we started to, figure it out. At least here in the U.S., all those things came along the side, right? Well, somebody said, well, if there's going to be multiple people in space, we're going to need to have to understand how we're going to help somebody. If there's an injury while they're in space, how often have one second here. How often are they going to have to deal with these problems that we have up there? That I think there was recently an astronaut on the ISS that had been injured, and there was something wrong with their heart, and they knew that there was something that they had to do about it, and they had to talk to people here on Earth. I think that was the place to do that you have to look at the experts that are here. So those things are important. I think that's the best thing you could possibly do, is connect with the different people that are doing the different sciences, and opening that up. What nation doesn't have farmers, and what's the best way? Well, yes. Who has the place that's the closest to what we experience with a Martian regolith? That might be somewhere that doesn't have all the technology to fix the soil. So how are they doing that? Well, how can we use what they know? And again, solving for Earth can solve for space too, right? It can be the opposite. Yes. So I think that's a really great idea. A really great place to start is start where you can start. Do what you can do and be a part of that. If there's something that you see that may be missing, that other people might need help from, that's the place to go for sure.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
That's very encouraging, actually, having your point of view about this proposal, because so you think that research institutes and in the developed countries can be interested in working jointly with developing countries on these specific applications that can be available actually in these developing countries. I think that's very, very encouraging point. So I will end up with the last question,
sure.
Which is also from your field of activity. Actually, one of the biggest obstacles for us here in the Arab region is really that the governments and the decision makers are still not aware about the importance of the space sector in general for even the social and economic development. What strategy should we use for in our communication with them to convince them and to raise awareness about the importance of the space sector, so they can invest actually in the space sector, or they can at least prepare an adequate and comfortable environment for the space for the private sector to invest in space. So what do you think the best strategy, and what would be the best tools for us to communicate and to raise awareness about the importance of the space sector, especially with the decision makers? And you know that the decision makers are also influenced by the population. So if we have the support from the population, so we can normally get the support from decision makers. So mainly for someone who is trying to get his daily his daily food and to feed his family, and then you tell him, we want to invest in space. How could we approach him in a communication? What kind of communication approach and method do you advise to especially in these countries, based on your experience, of course?
So I think that one is a wonderful question, and very in-depth question. I think so. I can't say that I know too much about what are the priorities of the country. You know, what is it that's a priority in Tunisia? You mentioned, some people just want to eat.
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, I think we all deal with that, right? We all deal with homelessness, and I think there's the idea out there that we have to do one thing or the other. And in some places, it may be a priority. Maybe, and I'm, this might be a difficult thing to say. Maybe it's right now. It's going to be more of the individuals like yourself and the people that are on this call that do it, and getting the government involved in it may not be an option at the moment. Maybe somebody's going to have to make an example first. Somebody's going to have to be the example first, to say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing, and look at where we're bringing. And then once you are in the process of doing it, what are you bringing back to the community? What have you solved for that that would help with space, that's going to help your local community? And then once you can highlight those things and show that to them and say, hey, this is a really viable thing. If you've given examples, or you do your research on other countries that have done the same. Like, 10 years ago, this country didn't have a space, anything space. New Zealand didn't have, Rocket Lab. I think it's only like 6 or 7 years old, somewhere around there. And look what they're doing. They've got, the international space community is paying attention to what they're up to, and what a beautiful launch place to launch from. Like, it's just crystal blue waters. It's incredible. But I think that can be a big piece of that, is that be the example, start showing what science is bringing to that community, and then what you can bring back to theirs. I think it'd be it. And then say, hey, here's some examples, here's why it matters. And then as you show more and more people, if you've got 20 people standing there in front of them, or we're reaching out to them, then those 20 people get 100 more, and get hundreds more. Then all of a sudden you have thousands of people saying, this is something that's really interesting. This can be a part of what we do. This should be a part of what we do. Let's get in this conversation. We deserve to be here. And I think that's something that, with the minds that are here that have been involved with the conversation today, there's no reason that they couldn't be, the next voice to say, now we have a Tunisian space agency. What do y'all think about that? So what's up?
yeah, it's very interesting point. Thank you very much. I'm done with my questions, and I am very happy for this interesting discussion. So the floor is yours, Rania. Please go on.
Hi, hello,
Rania.
Hi, Ron. How's it going?
Good.
So I watched your Facebook lives, and I saw so much energy in there and so much enthusiasm. I mean, you're not only spreading news about astronomical.
Full of energy.
Yes, he's so full of
messages, everything.
You give me so much positive energy, Ron. So I saw so much enthusiasm in there, and you're so passionate about what you do. I mean, you're not only spreading news about astronomical events, but you're also spreading your passion to people. That's my question here. How do you get always that energetic and fired with enthusiasm to intrigue people about the universe and about outer space?
I wish I could pass it on to other people, and I try to as best as I can. I love what I do. This is a really awesome job. I've been very fortunate that every time I find something I'm really passionate about, that I chase after it. For a long time it was martial arts, and then it was DJing, and then after that, I moved into music in particular is a big one. At one point it was fitness. Just like, I always do what I love. If you can do what you love, you're going to be able to put that out to the world. Like, it's really hard to hide it when you're in love, right?
Yeah.
People are like, oh, you're glowing. I just happen to love space, so it's a really exciting thing to be able to go out there and share it. So if you love it, don't be afraid to share it with as many people as possible. We all know some incredible thing about the universe. You've learned something along the way. How many people have you shown, say, Saturn II in a telescope, and they've not been impressed, where they've just been like, that's cool, and walked off? Sure, there's people that do it, but more than often than not, all of a sudden it puts everything in perspective. Like, that's a real thing. I'm standing here in front of a $300 piece of technology. There's nothing fake to it. If it moves one way, it moves the other. I don't see the thing anymore. Like, there's no way somebody has the ability to do that. And then you show them how you track it, and you do all of that, and all of a sudden these people are hooked. And I think that's a really big piece of it. Find the most amazing things that you know of it. Walk out on a night and point to somebody, point up in the sky at Venus, and ask them, like, most people will think that it's a star. Like, no, that's Venus. Like, that's one of the closest planets. That's our sister planet. So on and so forth. It brings up a lot of really great topics. If you know somebody that's never seen, like, a really dark sky where they saw the Milky Way, drive them out 2 hours away and show it to them. Do what as much as you can. Just shower that love for the universe and your passion as much as you can to people.
Actually, that's the greatest thing about astronomy, that every question generates an answer, and every answer generates another question. So it's
absolutely.
like, it never ends. I just remembered that you're Sparkman, so you can't lose the spark for astronomy.
Thank you very much. I one of my friends I was volunteering with a couple years ago said, man, it's going to be really awesome once you're finally like Dr. Sparkman. I'm like, you know what? That is
Ron, where are you? You ran out of here it is.
With my internet today. This is rare. So let's try it again. Can you guys hear me again? Can you folks hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Yeah, we can see
in the
you.
background.
Interesting. Okay, how about now?
No, only in the background.
Let's try this again, maybe. Looks like we may have some issues with my internet on this end. Sorry about that.
No, that is fine.
Keeps going in and out. And I've never had this problem before, so I'm glad. I mean, I'm not thrilled about it, but I mean, I'm hoping that it will figure itself out here.
Okay, you're here finally.
Yeah. We're good. Can everybody hear me?
Ron? Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So my next question is, so Ron, you are a publisher, you're a founder, you're a co-creator, and a social media consultant. So you can't get that great at multitasking actually without facing so many obstacles. So what are the biggest barriers you faced during your career?
There was a lot.
I'm sure
nobody
there was a lot.
nobody knowing who I was and not being interested in it. Just having to keep plugging away at it. The more that you show up, you just keep showing up and keep showing up and keep showing up, and eventually you're going to be a face that's there that people are just going to consistently see. You're eventually going to reach out to somebody, and that's going to get a little bit of traction from that interview or that topic, or you're going to be the first one to write about this thing, and it's going to get some traction. And you just got to keep hitting it with all those things as you find your way. And I think that's a big one. Not having enough money was a big one.
Certainly.
There's been so many times, and I've talked about doing a TEDx talk about this, where it's like my bank account was overdrawn by a few $100s, but I found out that I was going to interview an astronaut for the first time, or I did we did this really great panel last year at Space Symposium, and it was amazing, and an astronaut introduced me, and then I had this incredible panel of people that just do all kinds of amazing things in the social media space that were talking about it. And then 3 hours later, my grandmother passed away. It's just like, it's one of those things that it's just, but it's those crazy things happen. That's part of life, is that realizing that there are going to be really great ups and really great downs. A roller coaster isn't any fun if you don't go up and then go down again, right? So and how many interesting stories say, so I was eating a salad, normally something crazy had to happen, or something really, some really amazing thing has to happen. There's no such thing as there's not just a straight line to success. It's always going to be a bumpy road, the highs and the lows. So just realize those things are going to happen, and just remind yourself to not give up. And if you are if you're truly passionate and love what you do, then that's going to be the thing that keeps you moving forward. It's very much like what a lot of people deal with in relationships. If you really truly care about the person, you're gonna fight tooth and nail to make sure that you do what you can. That's not always the answer. It doesn't always work out that way, but if you put your best foot forward and you keep trying, that things are going to hopefully get better, right? And I think that's the same thing with this. Just keep at it, and then eventually you'll have some successes. It took 6 or 7 years to get to here, and now I get to do awesome things like this. 2 years ago, I don't know that anybody would have been interested in my story. So it's a really fascinating thing, and it can happen so fast.
Actually, that's the most inspirational part of every success, is how you get over these ups and downs, and how you get out a better version of yourself until you reach that best version of yourself. I'm sure you got out a stronger person after these obstacles.
Absolutely, 100%.
So, now Mars. I love Mars. We all love Mars. So what makes Mars your target for exploration, and what excites you the most to get that cosmic perspective and that orbital perspective?
Okay, say that one more time. Sorry, I lost your volume there. I think that was actually on my end. What was the question one more time?
I was asking about Mars, but I love Mars and everything. So I said, what makes Mars your target for exploration, and what excites you the most to get the cosmic and orbital perspective?
Ooh, okay, awesome question. Mars is what's next. It's the next one that makes sense. Venus will cook us in 2 seconds, so that probably is the best place to go. Mercury is just too far away, too cold, and not really much of an atmosphere or anything. If we look at a place that we could possibly build a habitat, we're going to look at, there's a possibility maybe something in the asteroid belt. Ceres might be something that we look at someday. But the next one that makes sense beyond the moon is Mars, and we're going to go back to the moon. Really excited that we're going to see the first woman on the moon. And there's a lot of great candidates that are there right now. I don't know how they're going to choose from the current group, from Anne to Jessica to Christina, here. Just they're all amazing. I don't know how they pick the astronauts that go to space on any particular mission when all of them are so incredible. But I think that's the moon is a big place, but Mars is that's humanity on another planet. And that is the beginning of us stepping off of that cosmic shore and putting our toes in the ocean. We get there, and then we're going to look out and see what's next. There's been some really great images of Starship, not just on Mars. I think it was the ITS was what they were calling it back then. So they were on Mars, and then you see it on Europa, and you see it on Enceladus, and you see it in different places. I think we get to that world, and imagine the first time somebody looks through a telescope back at Earth from Mars. That picture is going to be one of the big ones. Every time a new image comes out that you see, Curiosity sees Mars from space, or sees the Earth from Mars, or you see one of the imagers that's in orbit around Mars takes a picture of Earth and the moon. It's just this little tiny thing, but just by the details what it is. Just imagine what those people are going to feel like, and then from there we move on, and that's where we become multi-planetary species, and eventually we launch to the next place. I think it opens up all the opportunities in the world. For the orbital / cosmic perspective, I'm glad to have a little bit of the cosmic perspective already. I definitely cannot wait. I cannot imagine it. I've seen HD 4K videos of what it looks like to see the Earth from space. And I know it's going to be just one of those things that, as gorgeous as a picture is of, say Kilimanjaro or Nepal, it was nothing like being there. It's nothing like being standing in front of the Duomo in Florence, Italy, or anything like that. You have to be there to really get the experience, to walk around the Colosseum in Rome. Yeah. You need to be there, and I can't wait to be there. I would love to do it and live stream it. I've considered seeing if I could raise the money to do something like that and be like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I'm going to raise this money. I'm going to live stream this Virgin Galactic flight, and I want to show everybody, and I want to share it with as many people as I possibly can. Give me like 17 GoPro cameras and figure out can we figure out how I can have steady cell or like Wi-Fi service while we're up there. And I just want to show it to everybody too while I'm experiencing it. But I can't say what it's going to be like just yet, but I know I'm excited for it.
That's so great. So can you tell us about your childhood? What or who inspired you to be who you are now? And what made you stick that much to your passion?
So I've had a lot of different people along the way, depending on the passion that I had when I was younger. It was my martial arts teacher, Ernie Boggs. Professor Boggs was awesome. He was very much, I grew up without my dad. He was very much a father figure when I was younger. When I first started DJing, I first started as security working with him and then became a DJ, and that took me on this whole different path. So he was one. When it came to DJing, it was a guy that I consider he's basically like my brother now, and has been for a long time. His name's Brian Parker, and his mom and dad are amazing. They've kind of adopted me since my mom passed away. Whenever I go home, I always end up staying with him for like Christmas and stuff. But Bopper taught me what kind of man I wanted to be. He's just always been a really good person and always been there for everyone. And I try to do that as much as possible. I haven't always succeeded, and he's certainly glad to get on me when I'm not and tell me that, you know, I'm better than what I've allowed myself to become in certain instances. And then you know, I've had so many people along the way that have been just really incredible. Joe Hargadon was a manager of mine who again was like a father figure. Mike Dunn was another one that was a manager that was like a father figure and friend. All these people have done it, but I mean, the person that taught me the most about, you know, what I was eventually going to be capable of, and those, you know, messages still ring true even though she's been gone, was my mom. She was always, you know, you can do whatever you want to. She didn't push anything on me. If I found a passion for something, she was behind it, but she also was the person that told me not to give up on it. You know, just because it gets hard doesn't mean that that's when you stop. And I learned a lot of those lessons. So yeah, it would definitely be her. But I mean, there's been so many, it's really difficult. You know, Michael Crichton was the reason that I loved science, because I read Jurassic Park. And then, you know, I said I was always going to go back to that. You know, but if we find extinct life on Mars, maybe I can be an astropaleontologist, which is just the coolest name or title I have ever heard. So yeah, so I've had a lot. I've been really, really fortunate. I know that there's some names that I've not meant to leave out there that have certainly been huge to me, but I've been fortunate that I've had a large group of people that have inspired me along the way.
So it's so interesting how we all started our passion for astronomy with a TV show or just one person. I myself was inspired by the Big Bang Theory. So
great show.
yeah, so I love that story. But anyways, so about your job, it's so filled with adventures and amusing parts. I'm so sure there's so much anecdotes in there. Is there an anecdote you want to share with us?
Ooh, I honestly don't know. I'm trying to think of something that's like, I can't think of something in particular, honestly. I'm trying to think of one that like would kind of encompass everything. You stumped me. I'll give you credit on that one. Like, it's the first time I've been stumped all day. I'm not entirely sure. Like, and well, the thing is that I'm trying to think of something that really wraps up, you know, kind of everything. You know what? So there's one. This is going to be a funny one. It actually doesn't have anything to do with space. This is one of my favorite. This actually, it's a quote from a movie that I love. And I can't. You know what? I'm gonna find it real quick so that way I can read it exactly the way it is, because I love it and it's so good, and I'll screw it up if not. And I was talking about it just yesterday. And I love this. So it's a movie, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and it came from a book by, I think, F. Scott Fitzgerald. And it's like, for what it's worth, it's never too late, or in my case, too early, to be whoever you want to be. There's no time limit. Stop whenever you want. You can change or stay the same. There are no rules to this thing. We can make the best or the worst of it. I hope you make the best of it. And I hope you see things that startle you. I hope you feel things like, hold on a second. I had to pop up to log in. I hope you feel things you've never felt before. I hope you meet people with a different point of view. I hope you live a life you're proud of. And if you find that you're not, I hope you have the courage to start all over again. That for me is just, every time I hear that, every time that I start to get off course from what I'm doing, I always love watching that movie and that particular part. And it specifically meant a lot to me because that's a part in the movie where she grew up thinking one man was her father and this was actually her dad, and he had been writing her all his life and she had never read it before, and so she reads it all at once. And there's this part where he goes out and travels, and you see him where he's in I think he's in India, and he sees like the Himalaya mountains, and whenever he says that part where it's like, I hope you see things that startle you, it's him brushing his teeth. He doesn't really have anything at all, but then he looks up and he looks out at like this amazing view, this stunningly gorgeous view of the Himalaya mountains. And even with nothing, he has everything. And it's just really that awesome moment. And that was one of the things that drove me to go do the Everest Base Camp trek. Was I'm like, I want to see that. I want to see things that startle me. So that's, I think, could be a little bit within that area. So hopefully that one worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
So thank you, Ron, for answering. I'm gonna pass to myself for the last question.
Okay.
She's still on mute.
Yeah, I don't know if we do have a question here from our participant. Otherwise, we can go for the social media question.
Hi, Ron. I have a question. This is Jeff. I'm actually probably the only one in the same time zone as you.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
All right. Yeah, we're friends, right, on Facebook. So I'm down here in New Mexico, as you know. So first of all, I want to say that the discussion between you and Ahmed was excellent. I really liked kind of the full circle there on, the tie between government, kind of the necessity there, government regulations on launches and things like that. Mm-hmm. And the tie back to kind of private industry and commercial. Ahmed and you both made an excellent point as far as, NASA having to go to private industry, and what you mentioned as far as Elon Musk having to go to NASA. It's kind of an interesting, kind of necessary circle. In your talk so far, there's been a lot of discussion on, travel to Mars and sort of a solar system type of, engagements with the public. So my question to you is, for beyond the solar system, for deep space, that's kind of my focus area and interest area, deep sky, deep space. So for reaching out in those areas, how do you kind of approach that?
For us going out beyond that, or so you're saying sending a mission beyond our solar system, or sending humans beyond our solar system?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm talking about getting the information, interest in young folks to, want to look at kind of beyond the solar system. How you kind of communicate those areas by solar system.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I mean, show it to them, right? There are so many incredible things out there, and the more that we can highlight what's going on, I think that's what fascinates it. So if you say that we're talking out, and there's a couple different places we can kind of touch on there real quick, is that say you have, you've got, so Mae Jemison's doing the 100-year Starship thing, right? Where she talks about getting us to the humanity to the next possible place beyond our solar system.
Yes.
That's a fascinating thing to hear from an astronaut who's like, I think Mars is great, but let's go past that. If we show people, like the image that I have behind me, Hubble is really great about getting the interest in the total universe with what they have. The cosmic grief for the 30th anniversary, incredible. There's just so much out there that is just amazing to look at, that brings those ideas and also connect them to it. Like, you are a part of the universe. There's a very strong possibility that the atoms in your left hand came from the center of a star that was trillions of miles away billions of years ago, and that the atoms in your opposite hand came from another star that never came anywhere near that. Like, the idea that you were made of star stuff, that you are the way for, as Carl said, you are the way for the universe to know itself, is something that's incredible. Looking out into space helps us realize our place here, and I think that that's the cosmic perspective, right? To know where you came from, and to know where we all came from, in a sense. That's the little bit of answer that we can all get behind. We all have different ideas of life and in creation and how these things happen, but one thing that we can say is that we came from this. This is how we understand biology, we understand chemistry, we understand physics, and we understand where we are together. So I think that's one of the best ways to do it, is just to keep showing it, and showing it in interesting, engaging ways that aren't so complex, lead them a little bit if you can, to show them the things that are really important, and then they'll want to dive into the deeper stuff. None of us walked into a biology class and like, wow, this sounds awesome, but if somebody gets your attention with it early about how we're all connected in that way, and just the amazing story of life on Earth over the last 4 billion years, that now gives you an interest in biology. Okay, well, here's the complex things to it, but there's also the fascinating facts behind it that blow me away. So I think that's the best way to do it.
Awesome, thanks, and really good discussion, Ron. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you for joining.
So do you have other question from here, our participant? Okay, Ron, we do have a question from Khalid. He say about the difference between going to Mars and going to the moon.
I think that we have to use one as a stepping stone to the other. With the moon, we are going to use the moon as a stepping stone. There's a lot of different challenges that the moon presents that helps us that we just can't get here on Earth. And it's also really close. Like something happens on Mars and we don't have the right setup. That's not really the best testing ground when it can take upwards of a couple of years to get there, just to get there, when it's furthest away from us, right? So the moon's just a couple days away. You can be there and back in a week-ish, depending on the system that you use, the launch system that you use. So I think that the moon is a great place for us to go back to. There's so much we've learned about it in what has it been almost 50 years since the last moon mission. I think that's like next year. It's 50 years for that one or something like that. In 2022 something. I think that we're looking at a lot of different opportunities there. I think the moon's a fascinating place to go, and there's a whole lot of firsts that we still have there. There's water there, possibility of creating fuel there. There's a lot of opportunities for the first people from different countries to go there for the first time, from different backgrounds, first woman on the moon. So when we look at the difference between it, I think that one it becomes a part of the plan for the other. Mars is going to be a little bit further down the path, but not too far. And I think that both of them are part of a big part of our future. I don't think it needs to be either or. I don't think it ever should have been either or. I wish that we never, that we continued the interest on the moon and we could have stayed there. But yeah, so I think that's it. I think that the moon and Mars are big ones for us. I don't know. I think that Mars may eventually lend itself better to like more in-depth colonization. And, Mars is far enough away that we could screw up the moon. We screwed up the Earth a little bit. Maybe we shouldn't colonize the moon. Maybe we should look a little bit more at Mars, a place that may already be kind of desolate and lifeless. But let's check first. Let's send the right mission so that way we can see if there's still a possibility of life on Mars. And then if not, let's bring it.
Okay, another question from Khalid. He say, radiation and energy, can we relate in solar energy, or nuclear energy is the solution for that?
So I think that both are stellar. I think that clean nuclear energy is a major path forward. Solar's big. I mean, listen, we have energy pumping out of the sun constantly, all day, every day. 24 hours a day in different parts of the world. There's no reasons that we shouldn't be able to utilize that as much as we can. But understanding nuclear energy is vital, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to use both. Again, I'm very rarely there's only one solution to a problem. If there's 8 solutions to a problem and all 8 can be done well, and because it's different people have different expertises, let's use what we've got. I think that there are plenty of people that are wildly brilliant that are working in the nuclear field now, and I think that it's an answer to a lot of the problems. We're going to need a lot of solutions to the problems we've created here on Earth. So let's use as many of them as we can, as safely as we can, and I think that's the best path forward for that.
Yeah, we have a question from our social media. It's about the next space mission from SpaceX.
The one today. So we're getting ready. Actually, I'll be doing something about that a little bit later today. So 1 p.m. my time here in the U.S. I'm going to start a live stream with a bunch of different people throughout the industry talking about SpaceX's launch. I'm hoping that the weather's clear. We've been on here for about 90 minutes now. And so once I get off here, I want to look at the weather and hopefully it's still good. But if not, we're still going to run that show. I think it's exciting. Bob and Doug are ready to fly. It seems like everybody's in good spirits. The technology has been tested. There have been some issues, but I think that they fixed them. I have a friend or two that work at SpaceX. I have full confidence in what they do. They're brilliant people and they're wonderful people. And I know that they've put in so many hours to get ready for today. And if it's not today, then it'll be Saturday. But I'm excited for it. I really can't. Like, I've got a nervous energy, even more so than usual, and I'm just stoked to see what happens. So hopefully you guys get to watch along if you're going to be still awake, depending on where you're at in the world, where you're watching from. I think we're going to have a really exciting show today that's going to be one for the history books. We're going to see this is the first step on getting people back to the moon and eventually to Mars.
Mm-hmm. So Geoff is asking about, many people think that the money spent in space exploration will be better spent in social projects in Earth. So what does the panel think of this?
Again, both. You solve for space, you solve for Earth, which again, to steal from Mike, I think that there's a lot of these technologies that we have that are that give us the opportunity to fix what we have here. There's more than 7 billion of us. There's multiple countries around the world. For instance, we have a food shortage and we have a water shortage. Do we just solve one of those? No. Well, we'd solve both, right? Because both of those are important. We've got to eat and we've got to have clean water. So I don't think that there's any reason whatsoever that we would have to do one or the other. I think there's a lot of the technologies that are being formulated now, from cruelty-free meat, from cell-based meat, to the different things that we're learning about urban farming. These things would work on Mars and would work on the moon just like they would work here on Earth. I think there's a lot going on, and when you are interested in the space and science community, you're going to find a lot of technology is going to be like, that's a real thing. We're already starting to see that Star Trek future. If you're paying attention, like, they are not just 3D printing pizzas; they're 3D printing organs, And we're going to get more and more to that point where they're going to be able to take, your own the cells from your own organ and be able to grow a new one for you, and you won't have to worry about it being rejected. It will be your own. Like, you are living in the future. There's no reason we can't do everything that we want to do. We are a very resourceful species.
Okay, another question from Khali. He say, I have stupid question anyway, but I always think about it. How we can convince people that horoscope isn't right? It's something that is not related to astronomy. It's really annoying. Sometimes people believe weird stuff like this.
Yes, astrology is absolutely nonsense. You have to show them what and why. I mean, astrology is just saying that there is a certain group of stars that are in the sky at a certain point of the year. And because you see that's just pattern recognition, right? Whenever we look in the sky, we looked at these things and we looked at them so often because the skies were clear, and it allowed us to do certain things. It allowed us to start to move whenever we saw certain clouds in this. Certain constellations in the sky. Allowed us to move so that way we could stay out of the cold. We could grow new crops. Your ancestors were astronomers in a sense, and that archaeoastronomy, that ancient astronomy, was a great thing. It allowed us to survive, to be where we are today. But those things in the sky, that is just a remnant of that's when we thought that the things that were up there, a comet's not a bad thing, an asteroid's not a bad thing unless it's actually going to hit Earth. But they thought that those were going to be things that brought doom. It's not true. It's the same thing with those in the sky. And a lot of those times, those things change. You look up and like, oh, this is different. Well, it's different because Venus moves differently in its orbit. Mars moves differently. Those things look different now than they do when they're closest to us. So I think that getting people away from that is difficult. Astrology, where astrology ends, astronomy begins. The real science, where we know that that's the importance. Highlight the importance of astronomy. Show all the reasons why astrology is not real if you can. Not everybody's going to listen, and some minds can't be changed, but try and approach it as the most rational way possible and show them the facts. Here's what we know. There's no reason to make things up about the universe. There's enough cool things out there already.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I have had a couple of calls from my bosses because I thought we were going to be done a little while ago. So we might have to make this one the last question.
Okay, so the last question is going to be from me.
Okay.
So the last question is, what 3 words can describe Ron, and what is your message for the next generation?
Oh, what are the 3 words that describe me? Let's see. Passionate, excited, and I guess maybe tenacious. I don't like to give up on things, especially if I really love what I'm doing. And I think that's something that everybody has. Everybody has felt that passion for something before, whether it was someone or it was your family, the love of your life, or it was something that you found that you loved. Just having that energy for it and keeping it moving forward. My best advice is, kind of the same. Just don't give up on what you're doing. Love it. If you love it, there is a place for you. Make that place for yourself, no matter what anybody else says. The internet opened up so much. There are going to be people that you're going to connect with, and somebody that's going to want to hear your voice, and they're going to look at you and say that person is an example, and I can follow in those footsteps. Or if there's not somebody that's doing what you're doing, then be the first, so that way you can be that inspiration to other people, which is as important, or even in most cases more important. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. So yeah, just go out there and do it. If you love what you're doing, especially when it's space, if it's space and it's science, we need more of you. We're always going to need more people that are out there that are sharing the truth and sharing the science and sharing all these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So we would like to thank you, Ron, for your time and for the nice talk today. It was very inspiring, and yeah, thanks for almost 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all. This is great. Thank you for inviting me on. Everybody was wonderful. The questions were amazing, and hopefully answered some questions. And if there are some that are left over on the Facebook page too, what I'll try and do is, once everything's kind of done today and tomorrow, I'll try and answer them throughout the rest of this week and into the weekend.
Yeah, thank you, Ron, for your time.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, thank you for all.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you,
Nice
Ron.
to meet everybody.
Thank you, Ron.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Bye.